Welcome to video 3 of the tidyr lecture set. In this lecture, we're going to talk about separate and unite functions. To motivate this, let's look at table 3. In this case, we really would like to separate rate into two columns. One that contains, the cases, and the other that contains the population. And so our problem is that we have one column that contains two or more variables, as is the case here. To look at what it is we would like to do with this, let me get this a little bigger for you so you can see it. We want to take, we could take the year and separate it, or we can take the rate and separate it. So these are different ways we could approach this. So we are going to use the separate function, and if I just separate table 3, I tell it an into, which tells me I want to separate that into cases and population. Now it's going to separate by default on the first non-numeric value that is in the column. If, in fact, I would like to specify a separator, sometimes I might want to do more than one separator, or I might have a different sort of separator. So I can specify that as well. I can also use an option to convert. You see, it has turned those into characters, and I'd really like to convert them into numeric. So I can do a convert equals true option. As we were showing on the first graphic, we can also separate the year, if we would like, into century and year. And here, rather than using a separation character, I'm telling it how many positions to separate after. So looking at that, I have table 5, which has now been separated after the first two positions. The first position going to century, because I said separated into century and year, and the last positions, whatever's left, will go into year. So that is how separate works. You will use this same function to separate the flowers 2 data set. You're going to separate that into 3 separate columns. So see if you can work on that and come back. So once you have done that, I suggest you pause the video, work that exercise, and then come back. Now we're going to talk about unite. And in unite, it's going to be a less frequent problem that I'll have, but it still will occur occasionally. One might think of unite as the inverse function, in a sense, of the separate function. So we just saw where table 5 I had made by separating out year into century and year. Now I'd like to do the opposite and combine those back and make that one entry. So first we will try just doing a unite. And if I do that without giving it any sort of a separator, it's going to put an underscore between it. So instead, let me try the same thing, but now I'm going to specify the separator is going to be the null character. And you see now I have the united version. So for exercise 8, you are now going to take the version of flowers 2 that you separated and unite it back. So reunite the data frame you separated from flowers 2 and use a comma for the separator. This will be the conclusion of video 3. Finish those exercises, then read the next section of your book and come back and we will deal with missing values.